Lilach was my daughter who was scared of infiltration from the time she was a child. But she fell in love with somebody else who was born on Nirim, and he wanted to live no place but Nirim, and she wanted to live any place but Nirim. So in the end, they settled down on Nirim and had 3 children. So as of October 7th, I lived on Nirim with, and on Nirim, I also had my daughter, who unfortunately is now separated, but my daughter and 3 grandchildren also lived on Nirim on October 6th. October 6th, we had a big party on my kibbutz, because we're one of the 11 points, 11 nekudot. In 1946, David Ben-Gurion, the state was founded in 1948. 1946, David Ben-Gurion wanted there to be a Jewish presence in the Negev, so that when the country was formed, when it was announced as the state of Israel, he would know that there are communities in the Negev. So my kibbutz was one of those communities. And so it happened Motzei Yom Kippur, the evening after Yom Kippur. The people who lived on Nirim, the people of my community, in 1946 went out in the middle of the night into the desert, put up 4 walls and a roof, which at the time was recognized by the Ottoman law that was still respected then as a structure that could not be taken down. And there were 11 different communities that same night that put up these structures. So we don't celebrate anymore on Yom Kippur, Motzei Yom Kippur. We celebrate now on Simchat Torah. So October 6th, we had a big, beautiful, wonderful celebration, celebrating 77th anniversary of Kibbutz Nirim. And we had lots of visitors, and my daughter, Lilach, was in charge of the cultural aspect of the kibbutz. So she was in charge of this party, and my grandchildren slept that night with their dad. And one of my other sons came for the festivities. He spent the weekend visiting. He lives in Tel Aviv, but he came down to be with us for that weekend. He also, it's his birthday on October 8th, and he was just about to embark on a 3-month trek. So he came down that weekend, and he was with me in my house that weekend. And before I went to sleep on October 6th, I told him, I'm an amateur photographer. So as I said, I feel secure in our area. And before I went to bed, I told him, if you don't see me in the morning, don't worry. I plan on getting up before the sun rises to find this field of wildflowers that a friend of mine took a picture of at sunrise. And I want to go find them and take a picture there at sunrise. That's how safe and secure I felt on October 6th. Safe enough to get in a car in the dark by myself and drive out into the fields. I knew that we have the army and they have our backs, and that was the sense of security that I felt that night up till October 7th. Luckily on October 7th, I was too tired to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, because if I had not been too tired, I would have been where there were many, many terrorists. And I would not be sitting here talking to you today on your podcast. At 6:30, we started getting incoming rocket warnings. And I jumped out of my bed and I ran to the safe room, which is where my son was sleeping. It's also my guest room. And I ran in and closed the door behind me. But the barrage was so heavy that I was scared to stand up and close the window. And that's important, because if something if a mortar or a rocket explodes outside the house and the window's open, you're not safe in the safe room. It'll penetrate through the window. And we realized that it was such a heavy barrage that went from north of Tel Aviv to south of where we are, hundreds of rockets being shot off at the same time. We realized that this was something different. And after a while, we got notification. We weren't getting any sort of formal notification. And on the TV, also the TV was open, and when there's incoming rockets, there are pop-ups on the side of the TV in Israel, like these orange pop-ups that have the name of the community that's being targeted by a rocket. So that the TV was full of these pop-ups, but nobody knew what was going on. And they were showing pictures of trucks, tenders driving around the city of Sderot with terrorists. And I said, this can't be real. These are pictures from Pakistan or Iraq, or this has got to be fake news. I'm turning the TV off. So it was way too much information for me going on there. Turned the TV off, and so I only had my cell phone to rely on. And there was nothing official coming in. And the only thing we were told at one point we have an internal messaging system. We were told Israel has been invaded. Go outside your safe room, lock all your doors and windows, and then go back in and lock yourselves in the safe room.
Mm-hmm. Just a question there. When they said that Israel was invaded, did they tell from which part? Because it could be from the north, could be from Gaza, could be from... So no one
knew. Information.
Okay.
Israel has been invaded. That was it. So if you go back in my Facebook group, you'll see me doing a live.
Yeah, I saw that.
Walking around and saying, well, they told us to close all the doors and shades. I don't even have proper shades on some of my windows. It's just like a shade that you pull down, because I like lots of light in the house. So I took the blinds off many of the windows and just have just a flimsy paper shade that I pull down. And one of the doors is glass, like a 90-year-old grandmother could kick it down, even if I lock it. So, I'm walking around and saying, okay, I don't really think this is going to be necessary. They're not going to get this far. We're 2 kilometers away from the border. The IDF will get them before they come to us, but I'll humor them. I'll close everything and be a good girl and do what they say. And went back into the safe room. But the problem is that the safe room doesn't lock. It clicks, as I explained before, to prevent it from blowing open. But anybody on the outside can open it. And the only way it can stay locked is by you on the inside pulling down on that handle. So my son was with me, and he was sitting there in front of the door ready to pull down on the handle if we heard the house being infiltrated. And we just wait. And again, the only information we're getting is from the internal messaging system that is people saying, we hear shooting outside. And again, 430 people live in my community. I know everybody. I know where they live. And I'm watching the messages calling for help, saying, we hear shooting. We hear Arabic outside our houses. And I'm watching them coming closer and closer to where my grandchildren are, closer and closer to where my daughter is, closer and closer to where I am with my son. And there's nothing you can do. I mean, there are people that went outside and got a knife, a kitchen knife. I didn't even think of that, because if my house gets invaded by terrorists with machine guns, What's the knife going to do?
Yeah.
After a while, we start hearing sounds as well of automatic gunfire near our house, and Arabic outside our house, and we hear a noise outside our house that we didn't know what that was. And my son, who understands a little bit Arabic, said, somebody's calling somebody away. We looked at each other, told each other that we loved each other, and basically said goodbye. And waited for the terrorists to burst in. I was sure we were not going to see another sunrise. So my son's sitting by the door, pulling down on the handle, and I'm sitting on the bed trying to keep track of what's going on. And all of the people are saying, where's the IDF? Where are the people that are supposed to be coming to save us? There's an IDF base 5 minutes away. And we have first responders in our community, but their job is to hold the fort for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There were only 4 of them that were outside that day and active. All in all, usually there's about 10 that are first responders. Some of them were away on vacation. Some of them had just come back from vacation and hadn't gotten their guns yet. Some of them were like my son-in-law, who was a first responder and had his gun, but his 2, 6, and 8-year-old girls, Zivras and Yuval, were in the house with him, and he couldn't go out and leave them. So there were 4 active first responders, while there were tens of highly armed, well-trained terrorists running rampant, shooting through our community. Unbeknownst to me, at around the same time that we were hearing that noise, my son-in-law's house was being invaded. He heard the terrorists coming into his house. He heard them breaking things and shouting things, Allahu Akbar, and he told my 3 grandchildren, hide under the blankets. You're going to hear a loud noise. Don't come out from under the blanket no matter what. He raised his gun. He waited until he saw the handle. He didn't hold on to the handle. He waited till he saw the handle starting to move. He kicked open the door and shot the terrorist that was right in front of the door, opening the door. You know, I was thinking about it the other day that we lost people in our community, but we didn't have any children that were kidnapped. And all of a sudden the penny dropped. Just a few days ago, my grandchildren would have been kidnapped or murdered. If he had not been there with his gun, I would have lost them that day. After a while in my house.
Can I just ask you, like, from the time that you heard that Israel was being invaded till the time you are telling now, how many hours have passed, more or less?
From the time the rocket started until he killed the terrorists?
Yeah.
It was about 3 hours.
3 hours, yeah.
3-4 hours.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the timeline.
Yeah.
In a situation like that,
25, yeah.
the timeline goes all wonky.
Mm-hmm.
About an hour after we heard the noises, I was in physical pain. I had to go to the bathroom. So I quietly opened up the door to my safe room so that I could go to the bathroom. I endangered myself and my son, but I was not going to do it in front of my 32-year-old. And I walked out of the safe room, and as I opened the door, I saw that the slats on the window opposite had been broken. That's what we heard. The terrorists were on my front porch. They tried to open the door. It was locked. They started breaking through the window and got called away. So divine intervention or dumb luck or my late husband watching over us, we will never know. They moved on. All the while we were seeing calls for help coming through the internal messaging system. People saying that the terrorists were in their house, people saying that their house was on fire. The terrorists, when they couldn't open the door, they took spare tires from cars outside, brought them into the houses, piled rags and spilled kerosene on them, set it on fire, and set the houses on fire. We have 30 houses in my community that are designated for destruction. In this last week, they started putting up corrugated iron around that entire section of the community, and eventually bulldozers are going to come and just bulldoze them. That day we lost 5 people were murdered, 5 people were kidnapped.